That's Jasmin Diab from the Global Nuclear Security Partners Australia. She's joining us live from Perth. Great to talk to you again, Jasmin. This open letter, it's pretty detailed. It calls out the $600 billion falsehood that Labor are spreading, but you've put it into the debate pretty late in the campaign. Tell us what you hope to achieve.
What we hope to achieve here is really giving the Australian public a bit more transparency on the energy discussion, because what we've seen over the past few months, and it's ramped up significantly in the last few weeks, is a lot of misinformation and people throwing quite large figures out into the debate that aren't grounded on any scientific or engineering basis or fact. And when you scratch the surface, you find that a lot of these supposed lobby groups that are looking after the environment are actually being funded by organisations that have their hand in the pie for renewables to succeed in Australia, and that they are benefiting from it from an economic sense, rather than from what is in the best interests of Australia and its energy policy going into the future. And this is where we've come together as a group of professionals that are really concerned that our energy is not being driven by science, is not being driven by engineering. It is being driven by people who have a monetary vested interest in it, or are ideologically trying to push agendas, which is not helpful when what we need is clean, reliable energy now and long into the future, not just in the next 4 years for a government to be in power.
Yeah, there's no doubt, as they always say, follow the money, and all these renewable energy interests benefit massively from government subsidies, either directly or indirectly. So there's a huge financial interest for all of those companies to push the status quo and all the people who invest in them. And the lies being told about nuclear seem so absurd. $600 billion and it can't work, it'll be unaffordable, that it just goes against the experience of the 20 or so largest economies in the world.
Yeah, you're 100% right. We are seeing nuclear power roll out all across the world and economies thriving because of that. Germany was a really great example of what removing reliable nuclear from their system did. It created an increase in energy costs for the consumer. It also has driven out manufacturing and industry from a country that was world renowned for its engineering and manufacturing. And we can see this. We don't need to be the experiment to prove it again. So this is why we're calling out some of this misinformation and saying, hey, if we want to be serious about saving the Australian environment, if we want to be serious about reducing carbon emissions, and if we want to be serious about being a country that has reliable and stable electricity, then let's listen to the science and engineering. Let's remove the ban on nuclear energy. Let's do some proper modelling, cost analysis, feasibility studies. And no matter how the election turns out on Saturday, all politicians need to actually start listening to professionals that work in the energy space that are not coming with their hands shackled to renewable investors, that are not coming with hidden agendas, that are coming with the want to have a good energy system in Australia now and into the future.
Now, this is the point, though. Nobody is suggesting in Australia you're going to have a grid that's sort of 90% powered by nuclear or even 75% like France. There will be other forms of energy, including renewables. But because you have such a sparse grid anyway, and it's getting even more spread out because of the addition of transmission and renewables, you must have, 30%, 40% of baseload power to keep it stable. Now, so if we don't have coal-fired generation there, we don't want fossil fuels to be burnt, the only option to do that is nuclear. Otherwise, don't we end up in the situation like Spain and Portugal this week, where the system tripped out and they can't even restart it because they have too many renewables?
Yeah, that's a really great point, because I think that's the fear we've all come to this open letter with, is that what happened in Spain and Portugal this week is a really great example of what happens when you have dominance of renewables on a grid. the electricity system just doesn't have the frequency control in place to keep that reliable power generation if something changes within the grid. So here in this instance, there were slight temperature controls apparently that caused the system to trip. And because renewables are so unreliable in how much energy they generate and put into the system, that frequency fluctuates. We at the moment rely on coal to give us that energy stability in our grids. And so if we do have fluctuations from our wind or solar generation, it's okay because coal is there to give us that inertia to keep the system going so it doesn't just cut out and leave us with nothing. And so when we see figures like 82% renewables on an Australian grid, the fear is that we will not have enough baseload energy there to prop up that grid when it does have fluctuations.
That is the great fear indeed. Thanks so much for explaining that to us, Jasmin. I appreciate it. Jasmin Diab there from Global Nuclear Security Partners Australia.